Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about data types. Data types determines the type as well as the size of data. Okay. What do I mean by type? So type means whether the data is of integer type or whether the data is of character type or it's for a floating point. Okay, we'll see different types of data. And the next one is the size of data. So what do I mean by size of data? It means that, all right, so size of data means uh, the amount of bytes that is required to store the data. Okay, so right, maximum amount of bytes that is required to store the data. So bytes here means, so what do I mean by byte? What maximum amount of byte really means? It means that uh, as I have already told you about the memory blocks of RAM, so all of those memory blocks represent certain bytes of memory. Okay, bytes is just a unit for measuring the capacity of the storage. All right. So this is what bytes mean. Now let me give you an example. Let's say if I write int var and then semicolon. So here int is our data type and var is our variable. Okay, name of the variable. You can choose any, but you should take care that the name of the variable should be depending upon what kind of data that you are putting inside that variable. Okay, so here int is our data type and var is our variable, and uh, this int data type consist it took 4 bytes of memory location. For different compilers and for different architecture, this might be different. For older architecture, it will take 2 bytes. It totally depends upon the different architectures or the compilers that you are using for your C program to compile. There are various other data types as well other than int. We are going to look upon those data types one by one. So let's start with int. So integer data types are those data types which can hold whole numbers with negative values. For an example, 0, 1, -1, -39, 12, and so on. Next, we are going to talk about format specifier for int. Format specifier for int can either be %d or %i. Now, size of int is usually 4 bytes, but it depends upon the compiler's architecture. Now let's see some practical examples of int data type. Okay, so you can declare an integer data type variable as int, and let's say var is the name of the variable. So this is one way of declaring an integer type variable. You can also declare multiple integer type variables as int var2 or int var3. There is one another way of doing this, which is simply int var comma var2 comma var3. So all of these variables var, var2 and var3, they all are of integer data type. Here I have written a very simple code. Now what I am doing here is that I have created an integer variable var, and then in the printf statement I am trying to print the size of my integer variable var. Okay. Now in C program we have a utility, or we have a function called size of. Okay. So the function that you are seeing over here, this is a uh, yeah, this one. So this is a size of a function, and this size of function will basically going to return the size of whatever data type that you are going to write inside the parameter of this function. Okay, so here in within the parameter of size of function, I have I have written var, which is of integer data type. Now this size of is going to return the amount of memory allocated to var. Now I'm going to run it. So yeah, as you can clearly see here in my computer, this is the size of integer is 4 bytes. Okay, so it's returning 4 bytes. So it may be different for your compiler, but I believe nowadays every compiler is of 32-bit architecture. So I believe that is going to be 4 bytes for you as well. But don't worry, if it comes to 2 bytes, it's totally fine. Okay. Here I have also mentioned format specifiers. So for int, format specifiers are %d or a %i. What these format specifier usually do? So these format specifiers are basically for specifying the formats for your data type. Alright, so if you have an integer data type and you want to print the value of a variable, an integer variable, then you need to use %d. Let's say in this program I have created a variable int var, and I'm assigning 23 to it. Okay. Now if I want to print the value of this variable var, I'm going to write printf function. So printf, here I need to put %d. Okay, I'm writing here just for the sake of clarification. Value of var is, and then %d, then a comma. I'm going to talk about printf function in more details in our later videos. Just keep these things in your mind for the sake of this video. Okay, don't worry. Comma and then var. Now let's try to run it. So as you can clearly see, the output is value of var is 23. So since I have assigned 23 to var, the output is 23. Now let's talk about our second data type, which is float or double. So float or double data types are used to store real numbers. So here I have written, for example, float salary, and I am assigning 545.63 a real number, I'm assigning this value to salary. Then I have written double, weight 57.09. So both of these float as well as double, they both are used to store real numbers. Now since they both are used to store real numbers, what's the difference between them? The difference is of their size. The size of float is of 4 bytes, while for double it's an 8 byte. And for float we also call it as single precision, and for 8 we call it double precision. Format specifier for float is percentage %f and for double is percentage %lf. So here I have written a very small program in which I have created two variables, salary of data type float, weight of data type double. And in the salary, I'm inserting the value 545.63, and for weight as well, I am assigning 545.63. Okay. Now why I am doing this? I am doing this just to give you an idea the difference between float and double. As I have already told you that the difference between float and double is of the size. Alright. So for float takes 4 bytes and double takes 8 bytes. So okay, one more important thing that I would like you guys to know, that whenever I am describing the size of any data type, keep this in mind that it may differ from your compiler. You don't need to worry about it. Okay. Alright. So yeah, so float is your single precision and double is of your double precision. Now, if I try to run it, okay, now here you can clearly see the difference. The difference is that it has been printed, the salary is 545.630005 and for weight is 545.630000. So you can clearly see that the precision of weight is much more than the precision of float, which means the precision of salary. Why? Because salary is of float type and weight is of double type. So weight is much more precise in describing the amount that you have specified. Alright. Now let's try to see the size of these two data types. So I have run it and the output is, so for in my computer, basically in my compiler, size of float is 4 and size of double is 8. Now let's talk about the third data type, which is char, which is a short form for character. Char data type is used for storing characters. Here I have written an example, and in this example, char is our data type, point is the name of the variable, and within single quotation I have written a character period or point. Okay, so this single character is going to get stored into the point variable. Size of char is 1 byte. For char, format specifier is %c. In this program, I have created a variable var of data type char which is storing u, and here I am printing var stores %c, which is a format specifier for character, and then var. And by executing this, by running this, it will going to give us the value that is stored inside the variable var. Okay, so let me try to run it. Now since var stores u, our output is var stores u. Now let's see what's the size of character in my computer. Okay, so yeah, it's of 1 byte. And there is one more thing that I would like you guys to notice, that whenever I am trying to print the size of the data types, the format specifier that I'm using is %d. Now it's your job to think about why I have written %d. Now let's talk about our last data type, which is void. Now void is a very interesting data type. Why I am saying it's an interesting data type? Because it means nothing. It means no data type. It means emptiness, right? And the interesting part is that you cannot even create variables of void data. Okay, why? Because since void means nothing, it cannot store anything. So if it cannot store anything, then you cannot create variables of void. Now then, what's the use of void? Now one use of void is with the functions. I have already told you that function has a return type. Now what if we try to define a function, or if we try to create a function that do not return anything, then in that case the return type of those functions is going to be void. So if a function that is not returning anything, that function's return type will be void. And there are other use cases of void as well, but we are not going to talk about it here. It's for the later videos. Here I'm not going to tell you, and I'm not going to show you the size of void. Now it's your job to go into your VS Code and try to figure out the size of void data types if you can. And if you try and cannot able to calculate the size of void, it may be because you are not able to create the variable of void. So if you are not able to create a variable of void, how can you able to figure out the size of void? Now in this program, I have written a very interesting thing, which is inside this size of operator, or a size of function you can say, I haven't passed the variable name. Instead, I have passed the data type itself, which is void. And now if I try to run it, you can see the output is 1, the size of void is 1. So by doing this, you can calculate size for various data types. Even if you write here int, okay, so let me copy this and pasting it here. So in this program, I haven't created any variable. I have just written the data types inside the within the parameters of size of functions. So we have size of functions. So I have written size of void, size of int, size of char, and so on. Okay, so I have repeated void twice. So here I will write float, float. Yeah. So these are all the data types that we have just studied. Let me try to run it. So yeah, as you can see, we have word of 1 bytes, int of 4 bytes, cat 1 byte, float is 4 byte, and double is 8 byte. Alright. So thanks. This is for this video. Thank you.